Wonderful. So, hello, Christine. I'm so happy to welcome you back to our post-webinar Q&A session. Welcome.
Hi, it's exciting.
We've had so many interesting, intriguing, challenging questions coming up in our session that we have prepared this little after the show Q&A session to dive into any remaining questions that participants had. So let's dive right into it, shall we?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I would love to start off with the first question, and it is around how you found the transition from HR to resource management.
I found it to be wonderful. It was like coming home. I started off my career in the HR space. I was very junior. I did a couple of different things in that arena, all for very large, some smaller, but mainly some large organizations in both the, I would say, generalist space as well as the recruiting area. And I loved that. And what I loved about it was the people side, which is no surprise given the very large people focused and my philosophy on resource management as a very people focused area. However, what I would say is that I thought that at the time, resource management, it wasn't something that I knew existed. And as I've described, it's not a very mature profession. It's not been around, for as many years as their counterparts in HR. And so what I would say there is,
Right.
What I really loved about HR was connecting with individuals. I loved the strategic component, really understanding what the organizational goals were at a high level. And so that part I loved and continue to love. And those are the areas certainly that I would say translate essentially seamlessly into the resource management side. The part that I found I was seeking a bit more of has everything to do with my personality and nothing to do with HR, which is very much a it's me, not, it's not you, it's me type of a moment, which is really around, I found that HR strategy and the strategic initiatives in HR really have a long-term play. Not that they don't in resource management, but and certainly not to say that there aren't some immediately gratifying things about the HR space as well. But generally speaking, you're working with concepts that are a bit more a little less concrete. So what I would say is in the HR space, you're working with things like trying to improve employee engagement at large. I remember we were very junior. I was working on a team that I was assigned to put together a series of employee events to kind of raise morale. And so I thought this was great, right? And so I thought it'd be a great idea to have an ice cream party. So we brought in ice cream and I had some beach balls flying around. We were playing beach. It was awesome. I had honestly a great time and it went great. The event was great. People really liked it. But I was always very interested in what was the purpose, right? Why are we doing these things? It's not to have an event. We're doing the event because we're trying to raise employee engagement. And what I personally found difficult was after the event, I'm like, well, are they engaged? Is morale higher today than it was yesterday? It's not as tangible. And I found that to be difficult for me, especially at that point in my career. And so when I found resource management and really had that opportunity to connect with someone on the individual level, understand where they're coming from, understand their career goals, make something happen for them that was impactful for them personally, loved that. Meeting a business need, loved that. But then having a really tangible, in this particular case, it was a productivity target. And that individual was not scheduled and now they were scheduled. It was very cut and dry, and that had an immediate impact on utilization and productivity, which it was kind of a win-win across the board. And it gave me that satisfaction and motivation that I needed to keep going. And I think that's really something that we had a question earlier in the live session around how to keep resource managers motivated. If you're the type of person that is gratified by that's I personally, I get a high level of job satisfaction out of kind of checking the box. And so
yes,
that
seeing
when
progress.
I make a to-do list and something's not on the list, but I did it, I write it in just so I can cross it out. Right. And so if you're that type of person, this is going to drive you. So I find it very motivating when that happens. I want to do it again. Right. I want to staff another individual. I want to align them in another way. I want to find out what someone else's goals are so that I can help them out. So I found the transition to be wonderful. What I would say is that, kind of a little bit deviating from the question, but I believe this is somewhat in line with the spirit of the question, was sometimes people will ask what background is necessary for a resource manager, and
right.
Should they come from HR? Is that necessary? I think I happen to come from the HR space, and I can say that without question, it has been helpful. That said, no, it's not necessary. It's absolutely not necessary to come from HR. What I find is actually that I have seen many very successful resource managers who have come from many different areas, including actually the practice that's being supported. So for example, if you're working in the accounting space, having someone who comes from the audit practice or from the tax practice that really has an understanding of the business and what the deadlines look like, that can be hugely valuable as well. So it's really less about the type of experience that they come with and more about the behaviors, the attributes that the resource manager is going to bring to the table, the desire to really deliver results and deliver a solution and be driven by that, not exhausted by it. That's what you're really a resource manager.
Yeah, nice. Thank you for sharing from your very own experience, and also looking into this related question around, do you have to have an HR background, which is a question I also asked myself at one point. So thank you for answering that along as well, which is probably very interesting for many people. The second question posted by Laura is around, what would your advice be to a startup business with such a fast-paced environment where requirements can change really quickly? Sometimes by the time we've collected data in order to start a plan, things have already changed. So staying proactive instead of reactive is difficult.
It is difficult. It's very difficult. And one thing about me is, when I say I love resource management, I live and breathe resource management. So it's not my career, it's my life. I have a number of children I'm responsible for between my husband and myself. And some of them are very small. So I have babies. And one thing about toddlers and babies is that they're extremely unpredictable. And I promise I have a point here. So I apply the principles of resource management every day. I did it this morning as I was getting my 3 young ones, out the door. And so when you can't predict, don't try to predict something that can't be predicted, right? So dissect the problem and dissect the situation into the various parts that it's made up of, right? So what that means is, I have no idea if my child is going to be interested in eating a waffle for breakfast. I don't know. I know that he will want to eat something for breakfast. So I've positioned myself to not get myself crazy in the morning. I'm not trying to ask him an open-ended question about, what do you want to eat for breakfast, so that he can ask me for something that I absolutely do not have time to put together for him, right? I'm putting together the options that are available. You can have a pouch, you can have a muffin. Which do you want, right? And so again, silly example, that seeks to say, I have absolutely resource managed for practices that are super volatile, super dynamic, transactional type of work. Anything in the M&A space is gonna have that. Sometimes I would say this is certainly the case in any type of a business that is having a lot of acquisitions, right? A lot of that volatility certainly does exist. And you can resource manage, and you should resource manage, but don't try to resource manage the parts that can't be predicted. So something that has come into play for me in that space is, don't try to take a cookie cutter approach and ask a practice to predict something that they just don't know.
Right.
If you're going to ask them to predict a year in advance, and you're going to make them predict a year in advance, you're going to get really bad information, and you're going to get a lot of frustrated leaders. And quite frankly, you have to get out of your own way, because you're creating a process that not only is broken, but it's set up to fail. So understand from them, again, what their business is all about. What parts do they know? Are there certain types of clients that they know they're going to work on, certain types of opportunities that they know will come to fruition over, let's say, a 6-month period, but they don't know when? That's a possibility. What can you do there? You can understand what skill sets are going to be needed. So you can start working with perhaps the learning and development team or the training program to create some sort of a boot camp training process, so that as people come available, you're automatically retraining them, so that when these opportunities come available, they're ready to go, right? That's one way of positioning yourself. Another is, you don't know exactly what you're going to work on, but you know that this particular group of people is going to have something to work on, and you're expecting it to be, I'm again making this up, maybe it's 45 hours, right? And that's your expectation. And in fact, you actually need them to be about that level of utilization in order to meet the organizational goals. And so stop making it more complicated, right? Just try to predict, did they meet that level of utilization or not? Maybe it doesn't actually matter what they worked on. And maybe that's not part of the process that you need to predict at this moment, right? Maybe it matters that they have a well-rounded enough skill set, and that you're able to look at maybe the last 3 weeks, the last quarter, and based on those historical trends, you have a range of understanding of how many people are really needed in that volatile of a group. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 15. And you can start to look for patterns and look for indications, right? So I promise you, there is, whenever there's some sort of chaos, there's a pattern of behavior, right? So just like a child and they're going to throw a tantrum, while you wish that they didn't throw the tantrum, there's something that triggered it, right? And so if you look for those patterns in forecasting, you can start to see that perhaps there's a dip in demand in a certain area, or there is a spike in another area. And you can start to make some strategic positioning changes in terms of your resource mix to do things like balance out the number of people that are needed, or perhaps the number of people that are needed with a certain skill set. You can start to position yourself to understand maybe what's going on externally. So could you partner with maybe an outside vendor that can lend you seasonal staffing, because you know that that's necessary, but you know that it's not going to be necessary for 9 months at a time. Maybe it's a 3-month opportunity. So what I would say to really boil it down to the essence is, you really can meet a slippery slope when you've got a really dynamic kind of volatile practice. So stop trying to predict the things that just cannot be predicted, and boil it down to those areas that are a little bit more linear, and use that to understand what decisions you need to be making. At the end of the day, making data-driven decisions, it's what's going to help you from a forecasting standpoint.
Yeah, well made, that point. Thank you so much. And I would love to pick Ed's question next, as it's also relating to volatility. So Ed is asking, how much more volatile has resource management become in recent years? And how does growing volatility intersect with the human side? Should resource managers be mindful about people's job stability and sense of security?
So I'll answer the second question first, which is absolutely people should be mindful of that in the resource management space, right? You're playing a very important sacred role, so to speak, in terms of, if you're expecting individuals to open up to you and really share with you their career aspirations and their areas of development and where they want to engage in their career, that has to go both ways, right? So you have a sense of being their advocate as well. And so absolutely, of course, that's something that we should be mindful of. And that means marrying those fears in some cases with where the organization is actually headed, and really carrying the banner of the good news in some cases, and the bad news, in others. Part of being a resource manager, and part of the kindness I would say that the resource manager can show, is really buffering some of those messages. I would love to say that in every business, we have the opportunity to deliver on everyone's career aspirations exactly when they want them, but that's not the case, right? We have to meet business needs. And so sometimes it's about really being able to have a conversation with that person and say, look, I heard you. I know that this is the space that you really want to work in, and I have that in mind. I'm going to make sure that I look for that opportunity for you. Right now, that's not available. This is what's available, right? And explain to them the broader context of what happens to be going on from a business perspective. Nobody likes to be shuffled around. Nobody likes to just be, again, to use the child analogy, the kid doesn't want to get in the car. Nobody likes to just pick up the kid and, stick them in the car. They want to be explained that they have to get into the car in order to go to the park, right? So that's part of it, is tying their future career goals, maybe it's promotion or an elevation of some kind, to why it's necessary to work on a certain job. Now, what I would say is, for the first part of the question, has resource management become more volatile in the last couple of years? Yes and no. And what I mean by that is, of course, it's become more volatile because with the advent of so many new different types of technologies and many more demands, I would say externally, in terms of the war on talent versus the valley, that we've certainly seen in recent weeks. That of course adds instability. I'd also say yes, it's become a little bit more stable because, while in some certain instances resource management had been seen as a new, maybe an add-on, an extra, I would say in the last couple of years, absolutely driven by the pandemic and work from home, resource management has seen a resurgence and quite frankly a change in perspective in the way that the profession is viewed, from an extra to an absolute necessity. When you think about the most senior leaders in organizations back in March of 2020 and suddenly being hit with remote work, and in some industries that have never undertaken that style of working, their first question was, where are our people? What are they doing? And what can we expect? Very difficult to do that without consistent resource management, virtually impossible, I would say. And so while certainly there was a level of disruption and chaos that came along with that, in a lot of ways, it really elevated, I would say, resource management and kind of paved the way for the spotlight to be shown in areas that perhaps were missing previously.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Awesome. That's actually some really good news in there for the resource management community. Wonderful. Thank you. The next question I would like to pick from our backlog is, at a time when there's so much economic instability and many of us being challenged to show return on investment, what can we do as a resource management team to demonstrate effectiveness?
Great question. And it's one that I boil down to the core of, again, successful resource management is not about resource management. It is about the organization and getting the organization positioned and strengthened to meet leadership's vision. So the very first thing that resource managers should be asking themselves in those moments is, what is the most important initiative right now from a leadership perspective? Maybe it's retention of talent. Maybe it's productivity. Maybe it's retention of clients, right? There are so many different factors that are influenced externally that the resource managers cannot control. So stop trying to control something that you can't control, right? It's think about what is important to the organization, and don't just guess. Ask leadership. Show them that you are genuinely interested in and want to have an understanding of what is important to them, and then draw a clear line between what they're trying to achieve and how resource management will help them to achieve it. Because I promise you, there is a correlation. You just need to articulate it. If you don't articulate it, they're not going to do it for you. So you'll need to do that yourself, right? You'll need to understand, look, if retention of talent is important, what parts of the resource management process are you going to double down on to ensure that top talent can be retained? Maybe that's assigning them to, again, projects that are in line with their career aspirations. If it's productivity, great. are your current methods working right now in terms of being able to predict the future, so to speak, in terms of pipeline and utilization and productivity? If they're not good, lay out a plan for how you're going to improve them. Paint a picture for leadership of what this could look like if they had this information at their fingertips. They'll champion it. You won't have to do it, right? I do think that there is a misconception around who needs to be selling resource management. And that's not your job. Your job is to understand the process deeply enough that you can articulate how what their goals are can be achieved through the process that you bring to the table.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you so much. I love that. The next question is posed by Angie, and she is asking, what tips do you have for bridging your resource managers and HR business partners and bringing them closer together for information sharing? The roles have definite overlap, but of course, different skill sets are important, and both are important to our people. So how can you bring those two roles closer together?
Absolutely agree. There is a ton of overlap. And what I would say is having a very clear designation on what those overlapping pieces are. But don't stop there. Then the second part that's important is, what role does the resource manager play versus the HR business partner to achieve that? So for example, perhaps there is a particular project team within your organization that, as the resource manager, you have a viewpoint to see that for the last 3 weeks, they have been extremely overutilized. And you are actively working to correct that, right? Maybe you're looking to add more people to the team. Maybe you're looking to, streamline those hours a bit. There's something that you're working on, but maybe it's not instant. That is the perfect type of information to share with the HR business partner that's covering that same group, because your job, again, is to focus on rectifying that issue, working with leadership to understand what's going on there. But the HR business partner has a different set of perspectives, right? They might want to understand who those people are and what those implications are on their morale, their developmental goals. Maybe your organization offers some sort of assistance. And again, that's not your space as the resource manager. Your job is to flag that to your HR business partner. And the information flows both ways. So I do think that in my career, certainly I have seen some confusion around the HR business partner and resource manager role. And it's funny to me because they're actually so complementary of one another, and really having that direct connection and having some empathy for understanding what each other's jobs are going to entail is truly key to successful for both sides. There is some sensitive information sometimes, of course, that comes up in the HR space, and that is very reasonable. Having a good understanding of what information should be shared versus shouldn't be shared and why is important. So we're not sharing information just for the sake of sharing information. We're sharing information with a purpose so that it can be actionable. And quite frankly, again, going back to what you're delivering in terms of what leaders are expecting of you, I promise you that any leader is going to react much more open and be much more receptive to their HR business partner and their resource manager singing from the same sheet of music.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice. So again, here we've got the key skill of empathy, listening, understanding the other person's motives, and finding ways to partner up, collaborate, and be a good team, really, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, wonderful. Donna is asking, we are just starting out with resource management. Are there any tools you found helpful in forecasting or scheduling resources? That is people.
Yes, I would say this is going to be a broad answer, and I'm serious. It's just get a tool. Get a tool. I would say there are too many instances where your heart's in the right place in terms of what you're trying to achieve, but it's really difficult and again somewhat unreasonable to expect resource management to flourish when not provided with the right tools in their arsenal to be able to really effectuate the process. If resource management truly will be strategic, they can't spend all of their time, entering data and doing those tasks that are simply administrative. Otherwise, a tool could do it, on its own, right? So you're looking for something that's going to be able to position resource managers to get information efficiently, accurately. Ideally, it speaks to other systems within your organization, so you're not having to, work off of out-of-date data. It's something that you're able to report off of. It's something that captures the information that's important to your business. Maybe that's skill sets, maybe that's certifications, depending on your industry. Maybe that's proficiency level. Certainly it's their schedules. It's all of those different dynamic pieces of what makes up someone's career. Maybe they're on a flexible work arrangement. They're only working 80% of the time. Well, you need a system that is going to be able to capture that information for you. There's only so far, I think, that you can stretch the human mind to capture all this information, on their own. So what I would say on this is get a tool that can meet you where you are in terms of not only the capability that you need from it, from an organizational standpoint, but also where your organization is in its maturity path in terms of what data is even available to work off of. And what I would say on this is be careful. I have seen leaders and resource managers alike fall in love with the idea of a shiny new tool that is going to solve the world and all the problems. and there are some really nice tools out there that do some pretty cool things. And I'm a nerd in this space, so I love to hear about all these things, and that's fantastic. And I'm a huge supporter of, investing in your own toolbox. But what I would say is, word of caution, resource management. I might have mentioned this to you, Nora. It's when you think about houseplants, there's some that they can kind of survive on their own and they don't need a lot of attention. Resource management is not that type of plant. They need water, they need sunlight. So you can't just get a tool and, kind of go off to the races and inspect everything to work. You need continuous iteration. So the tool is a basic. It's like food and water, right? It's absolutely basic, but I think we'd all agree that we need a lot more than food and water to thrive, right? So leadership buy-in, continuous improvement, constant check-ins and understanding your people and understanding the direction that the business is going. That's what's needed to drive a really successful resource management function.
Beautiful. And you can so clearly see the overlap with the agile ways of working, right? So moving away from a rigid and planned out path towards really adaptive behavior where you iterate based on a changing environment and a new understanding. And the same is true for implementing a resource management tool, right? It needs to be able to grow with you and change according to the way that your business and your people are changing.
Exactly.
I think that's very wise. Awesome. Thank you, Christine. Now we've got a question from Taylor. I'm currently in discovery if resource management is suitable for our team and how to stand it up. What has this looked like in your past experiences?
It has looked like the most fun I've ever had in my career. If you can't tell, really enjoy speaking about resource management. And that's because I love resource management. Building out a resource management function is super exciting. So in all seriousness, what I would say is that it has looked like having an understanding of what needs to be achieved. So not coming in with a preconceived notion of, here's the structure that we're going to put into place, or here's the process that we're going to do, and it's going to happen every Tuesday morning, right? That's destined to fail. Really having an understanding of, again, what I'll say it again, it's, what is the strategic vision of leadership and what do they need? Sometimes they're not going to know what they need out of the resource management process. That's why you're there, right? And so it's really around understanding what is going to be beneficial to them. What challenges are they facing? What pain points are they experiencing? maybe it's not directly related to staffing, and so you're going to have to dig a little bit deeper, but perhaps it's their clients are a little bit unpredictable. Sometimes it's they have a really hard time recruiting people. Maybe they have a really easy time recruiting people, but their work is so unpredictable that they need a way of keeping them engaged before they get staffed, right? So there's so many different challenges, and you'll have to understand what those are to be able to build a process around that. And so I'd say that's the first piece. The next is designing a structure. And when I say structure, I mean the actual structure of the resource management platform, the structure of the team. Do you need one leader? Do you need a few leaders? You know, are there certain service lines or industries or other nuances to your business that really need a keen understanding of what's going on in that area? What is going to, it's kind of a help me help you type of a scenario, right? So you want to create a structure that allows the resource managers to, as quickly and as efficiently as possible, deliver on what you need. And so it's important to think about that when you're designing the team. So thinking about that, we've already touched upon the importance of a tool. And then the other key piece is a process. So a tool and a team without a process doesn't really do much, right? So having a really solid process around having a certain cadence for getting information with the right people in those meetings, what you're going to do with that information, how you're going to consistently and effectively make decisions off of that information, empowering the resource manager to make certain decisions on your behalf because they're in line with your strategic vision, right? So all of these things are important to think about. So I'm certain I've oversimplified it, but those are the main, I would say, the main components in really establishing a resource management platform that is future-proof.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think from listening to you speak, I get a real sense how joyful such a process can be and how exciting it is. So I love your enthusiasm for the space. Thank you. Susanna has posted a beautiful question. Given your unique perspective on resource management, could you share an example of a wild or unconventional resource allocation strategy that turned out to be unexpectedly successful? How can we apply this creative thinking to our own management practices?
I love wild things, and I love that question. Yes, I have a number of examples, and I won't bore you with them all, but so something about resource management that's really interesting and that I found exciting is that the path ahead is sometimes and many times unclear.
Yes.
What I mean by that is you have a lot of mismatched components and you're trying to make them all work, and you have to be somewhat creative and a little bit I would say entrepreneurial to
Yes.
make that work. And so I'll give you an example that occurred. This is a couple of years now in the past, where there was a part of the organization that was experiencing a huge wave of a peak season. Somewhat anticipated, but a little bit even more than was anticipated. And so we've got this piece of the organization that has this going on. We've got another piece of the organization that is growing, and in an effort to grow has made some really strategic hiring investments to bring on people with certain talent, but we're waiting for the work to kind of catch up. So on the face, it seems, hey, one of these things is kind of like the other, right? We can take these individuals and kind of have them help out in this other area, but that would be a really simple solution to a really complex problem, which is that those individuals didn't want to work in that space, right? So now you're running the risk of reputational damage, of perhaps, you know, not necessarily delivering right on what we've recruited them to do. And so that's very serious, and that is impactful. And so it would be, I would not suggest making decisions just based off of one piece of the puzzle. However, the wild part, and the part that I absolutely loved about this, was, again, digging a little bit deeper. So what else can be done, right? So again, is it really as simple as these individuals have availability, these teams need people, or is there something a little bit more complex about the problem. What else is going on? So when you look at what is needed, at the end of the day, it's kind of the inverse of the whole if no one's available, everyone's available thought, right? So it's almost like if there's needs in one area, there's needs in all areas, meaning if the skill set is somewhat fluid across a large group of people, is it possible that they can be leveraged, right, in a little bit of a more fluid way to give them different career opportunities? But we can maybe pick and choose a little bit in terms of, look, you're going to have needs one way or another, right? So is it possible that it's not just one particular engagement that has a need? Can we maybe pick which one we're going to fill? That gives you a little bit more control and a little bit more insight into what the work is going to be. Now you come over here and you look at the individuals that have the skill set, and on the face, they do not want to do this type of work. That is not why they came to the organization. That's not what they want to do. But what they do want is they want to be successful. They want to elevate in their career. They want to learn more about the space that they're going to eventually be working in. And so by having an understanding of what the pipeline is in that part of the business and where the work is expected to come, what types of clients we want them to work on and what clients they want to work on, can we find opportunities over here that while the work is not exactly what they had envisioned wanting to do, there is maybe 2 out of 3 things that they do want. Maybe it's not the exact type of project that they wanted to work on, but it's the exact type of client that they want to work on. Maybe it's not the exact type of work they wanted to do, but it's the exact leader that they aspire to become and they really want to network with, and that will help them broaden their internal network, within the organization. There are so many different ways to position that, right? And over here, this practice is overwhelmed and they're just trying to get some help at this point, right? They just want some relief, which is very real. And so when you start to draw the line, now this is harder. It takes more effort to dig deep this way, right? It would have been a lot easier to just say, look, we're going to take these 5 individuals and put them over here. But when you're actually teasing out the concept and really fleshing out, look, here's the type of client that is going to be important to them. Not only are you helping articulate that to the individual, so now they feel seen, they feel heard, and they go into that with a refreshed sense of how they can make an impact. They're not just being shipped off to do something that they don't want to do. It's real. We're not making this up, right? We're giving them an opportunity to gain experience that is going to be helpful in their career and another chapter when they come back. And we're talking about like a month or a few weeks, right? We're not talking about 3 years, right? And so being able to put that time horizon so that they know it's not forever, and then working with their leadership. The other unintended but strategic consequence of this is their leadership is now completely bought in, because they now also see why working on that is actually going to bring them some intel around the client or around that space, or really level up that individual to work on something that they haven't done before. What other strategic connections can be made from a networking perspective, especially if you work in a large organization. So that's my version of wild in the resource management space. It's wild because it's not, on paper what initially jumped out. But again, it's, if you really take the time to dig a little bit deeper, you'll see that there is always a solution. There's always a solution. It might be a little bit different than what you were initially expecting, but the right solution is going to be one that feels appropriate to the individual for their career path, meets a business need, and has leadership buy-in. And
clever.
If you work through those perspectives as your main tenets, I mean, it's actually pretty easy to get the buy-in.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's very clever. And it reminds me a little bit about what you said earlier, that the resource management function is really there to strengthen people and the business. And that was such a beautiful example of how to achieve that in a way that might not be obvious, right? So it's really about taking the time to look at a situation from a lot of different angles and look at it really from the point of view from different individuals that are being, that are connected to the situation. And Yeah, a lot of empathy required to
Absolutely.
put yourself into those shoes, right? Those different perspectives. Yeah, very cool. Awesome. We've only got 2 questions left. Taylor is asking, oh, we've already had that one. Susanna is asking, what would be the best advice you could give to someone starting out in this area?
Best advice is understand the business.
Mm-hmm.
Resource management, what I have learned, exists in many different industries. So understand what the business is. Your job isn't resource management. Your job is to help facilitate the organization's strategic goals through resource management. And you can't do that without understanding what the organization is all about. If they're selling a product, go understand what the product's all about. If they're providing professional services, go understand what that's about. What is it like to work on that job? What are the hours like? You know, is it flexible? Is it stressful? Be able to speak their language so that when you align them to a job and align them to a new opportunity, you actually know what you're talking about, and you can help them kind of keep coming back to you for more guidance and more support in the future.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And your roadshow that you referred to at the very beginning of our session, when you entered a new company, to actually take the time to go to the different locations, connect with the people, that could be a very powerful way to do that. And you also provided another example when new joiners come into your company, to also use that very unique moment in their career path to connect as soon as they start in your company. So I think both are very, very clever. Awesome. Well, that's all the questions we've had, all 9 of them. Thank you so much for taking the time to dive into them. And I think there's probably a lot of other interesting questions out there. And by diving into some questions, new questions might have come up. So, Christine, would it be possible for people to connect with you after this webinar and this after show Q&A session? How can they reach out to you?
I'd love that. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to continue talking through this. And again, this area is my passion, and I love working in this space. So please feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. And would people also be able to get your advice on certain things? For example, Taylor referred to setting up a new resource management function. Is that something you could also help with?
Absolutely.
Nice. Wonderful. Awesome. Again, Christine, a big thank you for your time, for your energy, for really sharing with us from a very, beautiful place of caring and really wanting to help the resource management community to grow and become the best version it possibly can be. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful experience. And again, really enjoy this topic, very passionate about it. So looking forward to continued dialogue in this space.
Sounds fantastic. All right. Thank you very much. There we go.